You finally did it. You bought a projector, you set it up, you open your first sewing pattern, and something went wrong. Maybe your pattern pieces seem to be slightly off. Maybe your lines were a little bit blurry, or maybe your fabric kept shifting and you just ended up staring at your ceiling mount or your projector on your table, wondering if you just made a huge mistake. You realize that most of these early frustrations were completely avoidable if someone had just told you a few things up front. So that's what this video is. The 5 things I genuinely wish I had understood or known before I started projector sewing. And quick note before we dive in, if you are brand new here, this channel is all about using a projector for sewing. I have videos on how to choose a projector, how to set it up, and how to calibrate it for accurate cutting. I'll link all of those in the description below because I think they pair very well with this video on getting you started using a projector for sewing. But right now, let's go ahead and jump into those 5 things that I wish I'd known before I started projector sewing. Thing number 1, calibration is everything, and you usually only have to do it once. The number 1 thing to understand is what calibration is and what it can and can't do. And also realizing really how simple it actually is once you get it right. So don't overthink it. When you project a pattern onto your fabric, the image needs to be square and the right size. Right out of the projector, this doesn't happen. That's not the way that projectors work. Your projector and the way it's set up will determine your image size and the orientation of the screen. Keep in mind, these can't be changed during the calibration process. So make sure you are choosing a setup in the first place that works for your space. Not just what your friend Sally has in her sewing room. Next, calibration is how the image from your device projects in accurate scale. If you don't calibrate, your pattern pieces are not going to match their intended measurements. And for garment sewing or anytime you're using a pattern, that matters a lot. The good news is that calibration is very quick and simple once you use the right tools, and you do it once. If your projector is in a permanent spot, you can save your settings and you are done. But with the new tools, it really is quick and simple if you have a portable setup that you do need to calibrate every time. But if you have a permanent spot, you're not going to need to recalibrate your projector every single time you sew, unless you move your projector. Now, you need to trust the process and also make your perfectionism cool down just a bit. As you go through the calibration process, don't overthink it. So here are some tips that I have for great calibration. I personally like to duplicate my computer screen, but for some monitors, it might have a better result in experience if you extend your screen, and that's for the second screen when you're connected to a device. A note for Mac computers is that sometimes they have a security setting turned on that doesn't allow screen mirroring, so just go to your settings and choose allow. If your projector has an auto keystone feature, it really is best to turn it off before you calibrate. And if the grid is not lining up during calibration, just use a metal measuring tape to measure your rectangle. It usually is going to catch some common mistakes when calibrating and just mismeasuring, which is the most common mistake when people are calibrating. Now, If your sewing table is a folding table, sometimes this can create a high or low point in your cutting surface. So if you're seeing your lines kind of bow or sag, just keep in mind that's probably your table is not level. Don't stress too much about the calibration process. It really is much simpler than it looks. So just do the calibration. Follow the instructions so you can do it properly and just get it done. But don't be afraid to jump in and just start doing it. If you're not sure how to calibrate, I do have a couple videos on the process. I'll put in the description. I also have a complete course called Master Projector Sewing that will take you through the complete process from choosing a projector to getting calibrated and cutting out your patterns and tips for getting cut out. So remember that resource is there if you are somebody that wants just a little extra guidance. All right, thing number 2 is that your cutting surface and tools matter more than you think. These are all part of the complete setup. Your projector table, your cutting tool, your cutting surface, they all work together to make a cohesive pattern cutting experience. The ideal setup is a large self-healing cutting mat that is large enough to cut a single pattern piece at a time on a stable table at a comfortable cutting height. But you could always start with a smaller mat if that's what you currently have, and then work up. I have a video I will link below in what my cutting table is that I made and put together so you can see that. If you plan on projecting onto a large cutting table, or if you're cutting on the floor without a cutting mat, you're really going to need to trace the pattern onto the fabric before you use scissors to cut out a pattern. Otherwise, I recommend using a self-healing cutting mat and a rotary cutter. I'd also recommend keeping a few pattern weights nearby. Since you are not pinning the pattern to the fabric, you want to ensure that your fabric is not shifting while you're cutting. You really can use almost anything for pattern weights. I have a variety of store-bought, or I'm even making some 3D printed weights that will work. But I've also used cans of food. I've used free floor tile samples. These are some of my favorites. I just went to Home Depot and I got some free floral tile samples and I just used those. Or I've even made these cute little chicken weights that I actually made before I started projector sewing. I was using them before. So you're going to want a little stash of pattern weights to hold your fabric steady while you are cutting, and that's going to be a little bit different from when you've maybe pinned your pattern to your fabric. So we're going to hold our fabric still by using a couple of pattern weights. Thing number 3, not all PDF patterns are projector friendly. Okay, this one might surprise some of you. Some may have heard me say that any digital sewing pattern can work on a projector. And technically, yes, you can project any PDF sewing pattern. But some patterns are significantly easier to work with than others. And knowing what to look for is going to save you a lot of frustration. The best file format to work with will be labeled as projector file. Patterns that were designed only for home printing or for large format printing can still be projected, but they often have a lot of extra clutter on the screen, such as tiling marks, page numbers, assembly instructions, or just not thick enough lines to be seen on the projector, and it makes it harder to see your actual cutting lines. It's not a complete deal breaker because we do have some workarounds for these things, but it's just more work. They can also be a hassle to make digital fit adjustments. The best patterns for projector sewing have a few things in common that I want to tell you about right now. They have individual layered sizes that can be turned on and off. They have clean, clearly labeled pattern pieces. They have high contrast and thick lines, so the projection is crisp and easy to follow as you're cutting. The pattern pieces are laid out, so the grain line is going in the same direction for all pattern pieces. Cut charts and cut instructions are included directly on the projector file. They include a calibration square or layers so you can quickly verify your projection is accurate before you cut. And finally, the patterns are designed in a way that making digital fit alterations is not a hassle. This means that pattern pieces are in one continuous vector line, and the files are not closed or password protected for editing. Digital pattern fit adjustments, while you may not be thinking about it at the beginning, as you move through your journey, that is probably something you'll want to move toward. As you're building your pattern library, you start to notice which designers format their files with projector SOAS in mind and which have great projector file standards. Even if you don't start using your projector yet, it really is a good idea to look for designers that include a projector file as one of the format options when you purchase a pattern, because usually when you purchase a pattern, you get all the file formats. So when you're ready to switch over, you will already have patterns that have projector files. Now, I'll be doing a dedicated video on my favorite projector-friendly pattern designers soon, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thing number 4, your room lighting matters. Sometimes people can overlook, but it does really make a big difference when you're working with projectors. Projectors work by shining light onto a surface. The more ambient light in the room, the harder it can be to see the projected image clearly. Just think about when you're wanting to watch a movie from a projector. In a bright, sunny sewing room in the middle of the afternoon, your pattern lines can become difficult to see if you have not done a few things to help. I'm not really saying you need to sew in a cave, but there are a few things that you need to take note of in your sewing room. You're going to want to avoid direct sunlight on your cutting table. Simply putting some curtains on the windows or cutting at a different time of day solves this problem. Also, some projectors are better working in lighter environments than others. So that comes back to choosing a projector in your space that's going to work. So if you need to cut out patterns during the daytime, look for projectors that have better brightness and contrast, or really look at ways you can dim the brightness in your room. It's really important that before choosing a projector for sewing, just scan your sewing room to determine where you think the best placement for your projector will be, that your table is away from direct light if you're cutting in the daytime. Again, if you're cutting when it's dark outside, it doesn't really matter because you can dim the lights as needed. I usually turn off my main light, but I do turn on a smaller lamp so I can see and walk around my sewing room, and I have that on as I'm cutting. If it's during the day when I am cutting out a sewing pattern, I simply just take my curtains and draw them closed so that it's a little bit dimmer in the room, and it just makes a big difference on my projected image. All right, thing number 5 that I wish I'd known is that you don't have to trace or print ever again, but there is a learning curve. Now, so this last one is less of a warning, it's more of a mindset shift, because I think a lot of people come into projector sewing expecting it to be immediately obvious, feel natural, and feel obviously easier. And it will eventually. But there is going to be a small learning curve, and giving yourself grace during that period makes all the difference. Using a projector instead of a paper pattern is a different process. And if you're an experienced sewist, using a projector might feel odd and different at times. You may often try to reach for that paper pattern and there's nothing there. You can't grab it the same way that you did with paper. It is different when you're not working with paper. Your first project using a projector will probably not be your best. I started with a simpler pattern pieces and projects. Sewing kids' clothing really helped me to get the hang of it. Smaller projects just help you to learn how to work with a new way of doing things and help you to get used to it. I also learned to trust the calibration square or the calibration layer. Every time I start a new project, the first thing I do is to check that my calibration is accurate and just trust it and go for it. Many find that their projected patterns are actually more accurate than when they were printing patterns, because when they printed, it was not always printed accurately. And finally, I just want to put this out there that you are allowed to go slowly. Projector sewing is generally faster than traditional paper printing and cutting, but only once you're comfortable with it. Your first few projects might not feel faster, and that's okay. Stick with it. Remember, you are learning a new skill, a new way of doing things. By project 3 or 4, I promise it's going to start to click and you'll never want to tape pattern together again. And I've seen this over and over again, that people say, oh, I cut out my first pattern and I'm not a fan. But then they stick to it and they're like, you know what? Actually, I really love this. And some people cut out their first pattern and like, this is amazing, I'm never going back. So wherever you are on that spectrum, keep in mind it is a learning process as you learn how to do everything that you used to do with paper patterns with a projector. And it is a little bit of a different process. It's a new skill that you are learning. So be patient with yourself. Let's do a quick recap. The 5 things I wish I knew before I started projector sewing. 1. Calibration is everything. You typically only have to do it once, but don't skip it and make sure to check before you cut. 2. Your cutting surface and tools matter a lot. Choose the right tools for the right job. 3. Not all PDF patterns are projector friendly. Begin collecting patterns with a dedicated projector file now, even if you're not sure you're going to stick with projector sewing. 4. Room lighting does matter, but it's a simple fix if you have a sunny room. 5. There is a learning curve, and that's completely normal. Give yourself grace and just start simple and just start. Don't get into analysis paralysis. Now, if this video was helpful, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people find this channel. And if you have a question about anything that we covered today, drop it in the comments. I do read every single one. And if you're just getting started projector sewing, this next video is something that I think you'll enjoy, so make sure you check it out. It pairs directly with some of the tips that I included today, and you will see it linked. There'll be 2 here, and you can choose the next one that is great for you. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time.